What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and this video, I want to talk about gaming prices yet again. Obviously stemming from yesterday, Nintendo Switch 2 being a pretty high console in terms of price point. Some more ripple kind of effects to it of like that Japan-only console, the one that's kind of like locked into Japan. I believe being only like 340-ish US dollars. Obviously doing that, I think, for some reasons that we can maybe discuss later. But, you have something like that. You have the games, of course, costing, $80 or so. The $90 physical thing seemingly has been debunked. I do think it depends on where around the world that you live. I know Australia tends to get royally screwed on like everything, so they tend to pay 100, 110, 120 US dollars on games. I don't know if it was there. I don't know if it was a UK price. As of now, it doesn't seem, at least US money, doesn't seem like physical games are going to be 90, but they are going to be 80, right? So Nintendo is raising their standard version. Some games are 70, some of their games are 80. Okay, now it's been a very interesting 24 hours, and I don't know how Twitter or X does it with the algorithm, but, as the day has gone on, I've started to see more and more people, even though I haven't really been in defense of it, I've actually kind of been on the more attacking side. I've actually seen more people defend the prices going up than attacking it. Now, I don't know. I don't know how the algorithm works, but let me say a couple things, okay? There is probably one argument and only one argument that you could make to the prices going up and why it makes sense. And it's an understandable one. It's one that's been said by the industry for like the last 5-6 years, right? A lot of complainers in those executive booths saying, well, the games have become bigger, the studios have become bigger, the salaries have become bigger, and the prices really haven't raised all that much since, say, the 90s, right? And factually, that is correct. Now, I want to clap back a couple different things here, but that is true. Okay, like those are factually true statements. There's more people. You didn't have 3,000 people at Ubisoft making Assassin's Creed back 25 years ago, right? Salaries are factually higher. It takes 5, 6, 7 years to make a game now versus back in the day you could get away with like 1, 2, or 3 years. I've constantly said, you look at Uncharted or God of War, some of the classic PlayStation titles, you can get a trilogy out of those games in 5, 6 years. Nowadays you have to do 15. And what does that really mean from the money? Well, it means that you're going to have 200-300 people versus maybe 100 back 10, 15 years ago. And you're going to have to pay them more, and you're going to have to pay them for potentially double to triple the time, which means you're doubling, actually, just in time alone, you're doubling and tripling the amount of money you're giving to them, but then also you're giving them more money because of other reasons, right? So bottom line, is all that stuff true? It is true, okay? Now let me stop there, though, and let me kind of go on the offensive once more and say, but what about everything else? What about the fact, I don't want to go too political, okay? But what about the idea, and you can look at charts, you can look at stats. Okay, well, like salaries haven't exactly, like the mean average and all this stuff, it hasn't really followed any of the other trends, right? So like homes are much more expensive now than they were 30 years ago, but people aren't making the same ratio of money, right? So like a rent of $3,000 back then to a rent of $3,000 now, you can look this stuff up, and I think you're going to find every single time that what I just said was right. It's not the same. So actually, factually, your money was worth more back. If you made $70,000 back 20 years ago, you were actually making far, far more than if you made $70,000 nowadays, right? So I feel like people are kind of forgetting that. So, that's a little bit separate than like a game price, but okay, let me say something else. What about every other piece of garbage thing that the industry has tried to throw at us to make money? Have we forgotten about that, my friends? I really feel that a lot of these people defending it just don't think about that. Okay, yes, games have everything I said, right? Everything I said. Games are more expensive, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, number one, we didn't do that. Now, maybe some people have pushed a little too far with, well, we want every game to be 100 plus hours, but I have violently pushed against that, right? I've always talked about quality versus quantity. I don't need every game to be a 60-hour open world game. I'm fine going back to 20-hour open world games because you know what? Maybe we can actually get games faster. Maybe we can get them 3 years instead of 5. Maybe we can get $40 or $50 games instead of $70 or $80 if it takes half the time to make them. So I've always pushed that kind of, angle to things, right? But what about like everything else? This is not a new problem. This is a problem that people have known about for years. And what have they tried to do? charge everything. What about games that just aren't complete when they come out? This is a big one. I saw like one person make this point on social media. We're raising prices, but we're not raising quality. And that is a huge, huge thing that I feel like people just aren't. Like, Mario Kart World looks awesome, okay? But when you start to charge $80 for games, and I think this has been said over the last 24 hours, when you think about GTA, when you think about any of this stuff, is it legitimately worth it? Now, the worth of a game to you might be different than the worth of a game to me, right? I might pay $100 for game X. You might only pay $20 for that same game. But what about games that come out nowadays and take 4 months to even like run properly? You keep raising the prices. At least back 20 years ago, yes, there were games that were terrible. There were games that were not even playable, okay? They would come out and they'd be complete garbage. But that was it. Like, you were guaranteed that game, and you were only guaranteed that game. And a lot of games, by the way, some of the gems of the world, some of the best games of all time that you can think about in the last, say, 30 years of gaming, did they get year 1, year 2 patches to fix all the mistakes of the first couple months of when it came out? Not really. Those things didn't really exist. You got the game, and that was it. Nowadays, so okay, well, back then you were paying $60. Now, that $60 is different now than it was back then, but what about the quality? What about what else has changed? Well, now you get games that take 6 months to even run properly. Now you get games that have DLC. DLC wasn't a thing 25 years ago. Season passes, live service, charging for... What about games that are full price and they also have microtransactions in them? Are we going to defend that? Are we going to defend those games raising their prices another $10? Because they already have microtransactions. So here's what I'm saying. Here's ultimately what I'm saying. At the end of the day, game prices are going to go up. Like, the industry is full of followers. I say that all the time, right? One person does something, the rest follow. It happens in themes. It happens in types of games, right? Like, when one big sci-fi game works, you got 30 other studios that are throwing out a sci-fi. It happens all the time, okay? There's a couple leaders, which is life too. There's a couple leaders, the rest are followers. When one raises the price, the rest will raise the price. This is inevitable, okay? It's going to happen. Games are going to be $80 now. Give it another year. Give it to next gen. I don't care what you want to say. The prices are going up again because they already went up to 70. Now they're going to go up to 80. We need to have that quality be attached to it because, again, can games actually be worth that? I think there's been interesting conversations over the last 24 hours of, like, I've seen people say, in fact, actually a close friend of mine had said, like, no game is worth $80. And I can get where people are coming from when they say that. Like, truly I can, right? If somebody says, I will never pay $80 for a game, I can get that. But I actually also do think, though, that stems from just what's its worth to you, right? Like, is a game ever going to be worth $80, $90, $100? It depends. It depends on the game, and it depends on the person, right? But one thing that needs to happen if we're going to accept this, because ultimately as an industry, this is an accepting type thing. I mean, you don't have to buy it, but, like, we're going to enter this era, right? We're going to enter the era of $80 games. The expectations for games needs to go up. And I guess from my perspective, the expectation is just that quality of day one and the quality of kicking everything else out of the game. See, if you could promise me that, like, live service would go away forever, because that was a big, like, cancer, I think, in the gaming industry that really hurt a lot. Again, followers and leaders, right? That really, it has some good ideas. It can work in certain instances, and it has, and it's delivered really good games, but it's also crushed so much. It's definitely, in my opinion, live service has harmed more than it's helped. Okay, so but that is just me, granted. But if you can promise me, like, would I accept an $80 game if we can kick a lot of this other stuff, on the curb? I would raise it 80, 90, 100. Now, again, it depends on the game. It depends on the person. But we've got to stop, like, okay, well, that doesn't mean, again, $80 to me does not mean 80 hours. It means some really good content. You better be pumping out really, really good games. So that's, like, number one, right? Just the quality of your game for being 80 hours needs to be there. Now, for a lot of people, and I'll echo this because I can understand it, and I would also do it to some degree, the length, or I would say how long you can experience it, right? So like, again, I don't need 100-hour games, but I need, okay, well, if you're spending $80, you probably don't want to play a game for 5 hours for $80, right? A Mario Kart World, you're going to want to play that at least 2, 3, 4, 5 months online all the time, right? Playing with your friends, playing with your family. You're going to want to get that $80 worth out of it. Now, again, everybody's worth is different. To me, it's like a couple months. Like if I'm spending $80 on Mario Kart, I'm going to be playing that game with my family and online and streaming and all this. I'm going to be doing it for months because that's $80 worth to me. That's what games are going to have to do. Now, on top of that, my own personal expectation is that we stop with these. If you come out broken, if we have a Cyberpunk situation again, there needs to be something that happens. I don't know what specifically, but you can't. You cannot be charging 80, 90, and as the years go, I imagine this is just going to keep going up. You cannot look at me with a straight face and tell me that you're going to raise prices and yet your game is going to come out as a complete broken mess, right? Unacceptable. So that's those are kind of the things that I think maybe it actually helps. I mean, maybe it actually really destroys the entire industry. That's also possible, but maybe it helps. Maybe this really lights the fire under these people and say, hey, well, I guess we'll tolerate it. Maybe some people will tolerate it, but you better be not just pumping out good quality, but complete full games. No ending as a DLC thing, no season passes, no, again, certain instances here and there, whatever, depends on the situation, but like a lot of this stuff has to be cleaned up. So we'll see, but ultimately, the market's going to speak for itself. And I said that, yesterday, like we'll see. Mario Kart is huge. $80 though, like, is it going to sell? I think it is. But I wonder how well, and it's hard to compare because Deluxe, came out and sold so many millions upon tens and tens and tens of millions. I feel it's a different era. It's a new console. It's only on that console. So we'll see, but we'll see actually if it has any impact on it. And we'll see, of course, which games follow the trend. I said it back with GTA 6, and I would say it again actually for Mario Kart. A couple companies are going to try this. It will work here and there, and these are two good examples. GTA will sell $100, unit or $70, whatever. GTA 6 is going to sell. Mario Kart will sell. It is probably maybe the second biggest game on planet Earth. Not as talked about as maybe some of the big games that you hear about online, but in terms of units sold, it's absolutely gigantic. But not every game is a Mario Kart. Not every game is a GTA. And so there'll be followers and they will not succeed. And so I'm excited to see that part, to see like where the industry will go after that. So we'll see how it all shakes out at the end of the day. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure as always you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.